Hey everybody, Mr. Hildebrand here. We are reading our food article, okay? Roman food, comparing and contrasting with American food, dining customs, and wealth. Seeing how food ties into all that. We've been reading the article together. This is kind of what we discussed on the first day of class. We watched that goofy video of the Romans having a dinner party at the emperor's house. And that is based on real historical evidence. You can check that out. I did post that on Canvas if you'd like to check it out. And then after that, we had this discussion. So I wanted to kind of share what everybody came up with in class. So that way anybody who missed for some reason can kind of catch up where we're at. So this is our prompt. It says the passage discusses the foods and dining habits of ancient Romans. Write an essay comparing and contrasting the foods, dining customs, and wealth of ancient Romans and Americans today. Use evidence from the passage to support your response. So once we're done discussing the article, going through finding some evidence, we will write an essay answering this prompt. So let's kind of break this down and get a little bit of background info. So you already watched that goofy video of some of the maybe more wild, out there, extravagant things that the Romans ate at their fancy dinner parties. Our article is going to get into maybe more everyday. Okay, what was food like in Rome every day? So a little bit of background context. Okay, the first thing we did was we went through the article and we decided to contrast and compare the food that Romans ate and Americans ate. So, for example, some Roman foods that we saw. Okay, we saw sausage, we saw pork, we saw chicken, we saw vegetables. We saw stews, okay, soup, boards, that kind of stuff. We did see some more exotic things like camels. We saw songbirds, okay, the little finches we talked about. Songbirds. They did have cow. They did have beef, but not a whole lot of it. But the big one is the pork. Okay, the big one is the pork. Now, American foods. We live in America right now. Okay, we have all different kinds of foods from all over the world. So a lot of them are the same, right? We have sausage, pork, chicken, vegetables, stews, camels. Not really. In the United States, we don't eat camels or really songbirds. There are lots of different birds like chicken, duck, all kinds of things. Beef is a big one in the United States. So take some time, look around the world around you, think about what you eat, your family eats, and we can compare that, right? And contrast it. The next thing we talked about was dining customs. So first we said, well, what the heck is a dining custom? So dining custom is basically how you eat and how you cook, okay? Now, sometimes there are rules that go with it. Different practices. Sometimes they're spoken, you're told. Sometimes they're unspoken rules. So, for example, I'll give you an example from my life. Growing up, one of our dining customs was you were not allowed to burp at the table. Okay, it was considered rude in my family. It's not that same way for every family, right? It could be different in yours. Another example was my family thought it was rude to put your elbows on the table. Other families, that's okay. All right. Other cultures around the world, that's okay. Some people eat at the dinner table every night. Some people, they gather around a small table on the floor and eat. Just depends on your culture. Another example is maybe when we go to restaurants in the United States, something that's very common is called tipping. So when the waiter brings you your food, your drink, whatever you ordered, it's often common in the United States to give them extra money afterwards, right? A small percentage of whatever your bill was to them, okay, for the good service. And then if it's bad service, a lot of times people will tip less or give less money. In other countries, I know especially in Europe, they pay their servers a little bit more. And so tipping is not a thing. People don't tip because the servers get paid more than in the United States. So that's maybe an example. In the article, we looked at some of the spoken or unspoken rules, how they cook, how they eat. For example, the wealthy Romans, they could barbecue, they could broil their meat. Some of the way they cooked was they made porridges and stews. Some of the people raised the animals basically in their homes, okay, the pigs or the chickens. Some people do that. I know in my neighborhood, we're not even allowed to have chickens or pigs. So that's maybe a contrast there. So some things the same, some things different. We talked about how some Romans, especially the rich ones, they had kitchens in their homes, right? In the United States, most people have kitchens in their home. Poor people in Rome, they went out to eat pretty much every day. They'd have to go down the street. There'd be vendors, people with kind of like, we would call them food trucks, or little stands that they would go eat at most days. For us, that's kind of a fun thing you do, or you go out to get food because it's quick, right? Go to a restaurant to get food quickly. In Rome, that was pretty normal. Okay, so some comparing, some contrasting there. So we talked about all that. Then we talked about wealth. Okay, how much money you have impact your food? So, for example, we looked at our McDonald's menu here, and we said, okay, what can we buy for $8? And we see there's tons of different combos, right? All kinds of desserts and breakfast items, food. You could really throw any combo together and buy a lot of things for $8, right? It's pretty cheap. Okay, a lot of people go to McDonald's and love it. And then we looked at another menu. Okay, this is a very fancy restaurant. It's down on Front Street. It's called Char's. It's at the Tracy Mansion, okay, historical mansion in Harrisburg, and it is a very fancy restaurant. Okay, so for example, we said, well, what can we get for $8 here? And we kind of went down through, and it looks like, not a whole lot for $8 here. Whoops, let me go back up. And we get close. We could get some French fries maybe for $9. So we get kind of close there. Let me see if I can scroll down a little bit. Let me zoom out here. We get to the second page. Wow, we start getting to some steak and some seafood, some pork, right? The Romans ate pork. Some chicken. And we start to see the prices go way up. $44, $38, $29, okay, $32. So we can't take our $8 and go to the Tracy Mansion and eat. So we see that in the United States, sometimes how much money you have affects where you can go to eat, right? It affects maybe what grocery store you go to. Okay, I know I do my grocery shopping at Walmart. I've got friends who are wealthier, they got more money, and they live out near Philadelphia. They like to go to a store called Whole Foods. Okay, lots of organic and specialty items. It's just more expensive. Okay, not something my family would do. So we see the type of food, right? Really fancy steaks and chicken and I don't even know, appetizers, right? Oysters, different seafood. Really expensive. So probably most of the time, wealthy, rich people would do it. Everybody else, maybe a super special occasion. Another thing we talked about as far as options changing based on your money was maybe one big difference was in ancient Rome, the poor people didn't have kitchens. They didn't have room. We have kitchens, right? And most of our homes and apartments have it, even if you're not rich. Okay? Most homes do. We also talked about, obviously, electricity changes how we can cook things. We have refrigerators. We can store things longer. So there's also some technological changes that you don't even have to be rich in the United States to have maybe an advantage over the ancient Romans. Okay, so we saw in the ancient Roman times, the rich had more food and they had better food. The poor, less food, and not as high quality. It happens a lot in the United States too. Another thing we talked about was maybe how the Romans showed off their wealth. A lot of times they were showing their money by their food. Right? They'd buy a whole animal, put it on the table. They would buy really extravagant things like a camel or songbirds, or they'd throw these big fancy dinner parties where they basically would create a beautiful display out of the food to show how much money they had. Now, people still show off right? We might watch a movie or TV where there's a big fancy wedding with a big dinner party, or we might be watching a show about rich people who go to a really nice fancy restaurant, okay, where everybody's wearing suits and ties. But we also see people show off their wealth today with social media, right? We talked about people getting on Instagram or Snapchat and showing off their food, okay, their meal. Okay, I don't do that because when my food comes out, I just eat it right away. But we see maybe that's a similarity, right? People still showing off their money, showing off their food, okay, just in different ways. So that was our discussion. Hopefully that was helpful, give you some ideas when we move on to comparing and contrasting on our essay map here in a little bit. All right, if you have questions, folks, email me, stop me. I'd love to help you out.